Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're actually taking a trip way back to the 14th century to look at Geoffrey Chaucer's absolute masterpiece. And look, if you're sitting there thinking medieval literature is just, a bunch of dry, dusty pages, well, get ready to have your mind totally changed. We are diving into a wildly diverse, intensely satirical, and honestly, a surprisingly relatable cast of characters. It is, no joke, the medieval equivalent of The Breakfast Club.
I want you to imagine, just for a second, being trapped on a really long road trip with a completely chaotic mix of people. We're talking pious do-gooders, loudmouth drunks, and super slick scam artists, right? How long would you actually last before someone entirely lost their mind? Well, that unbelievable tension and comedy is exactly what makes Chaucer's work so incredibly legendary. So the setup here is simple, but it is genius. Our characters are going on a pilgrimage, which is just a religious journey. But before they even hit the road, all these complete strangers happen to gather at a London tavern called the Tabard Inn. And this acts as the absolute perfect social microcosm. It brings together people from totally different walks of life, who honestly would otherwise never say a single word to one another. Okay, to make sense of this massive ensemble, we've grouped them into some thematic archetypes. Here is our roadmap. Number 1, welcome to the pilgrimage. 2, chivalry and virtue. 3, the corrupt clergy. 4, the rising middle class. 5, scoundrels, thieves, and rascals. And finally, 6, stories within the story. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Welcome to the pilgrimage. Meet the massive cast. Seriously, just look at this crowd. And this is only a fraction of the travelers that our jolly tavern keeper, Harry Bailey, is somehow trying to manage. We've got a knight, a squire, a prioress, a monk, a friar. We've got merchants, a parson, a miller, a reeve, a pardoner. It's crazy. Chaucer is literally bringing every single corner of medieval society, the religious folks, the military, the laborers, and the tradesmen, cramming them all into one noisy, crowded tavern. Section 2. Chivalry and virtue. The genuinely good. Now, amidst all this chaos, notice the huge generational contrast here. On the one hand, we have the knight. He's the ideal medieval Christian man-at-arms, right? A total veteran of 15 crusades who fights strictly for truth and for Christ. He completely ignores personal glory. But then, look at his son, the squire. He's a knight in training, sure, but he's got this curly hair, he's dressed in highly fashionable clothes, and he is way more interested in dancing, singing, and courting ladies than fighting wars. Typical, right? And hey, speaking of virtue, we absolutely have to talk about these two brothers. First, the parson. He's an impoverished town pastor, but he is incredibly rich in holy thoughts. He is that rare religious figure in this group who actually practices what he preaches. He travels through rain and shine to help his parishioners. And his brother, the plowman, is just as good-hearted. He's a peasant who loves God and happily plows the fields of poor men completely for free. I mean, they are the rare, shining examples of genuine humility on this whole trip. Section 3. The corrupt clergy. Chaucer's biting satire. Unfortunately for the medieval church, that virtuous person we just talked about, very much the exception. Just look at the expectation versus reality here. A monk is supposed to be living in poverty, right? Devoted strictly to work and prayer in a tiny monastery cell. But Chaucer's actual monk? Oh man, he is wealthy, he's loud, well-fed, and dressed in fine furs and hunting boots. He completely disdains the rules because, honestly, he'd rather be out riding horses and hunting. And we see this exact same hypocrisy with the prioress, Madame Eglantine. She is supposed to be a humble, modest nun. But instead, her focus is entirely on exquisite aristocratic taste. She sings through her nose, she speaks French with this terrible accent just to sound fancy, and she actually feeds expensive meats to her dogs instead of giving it to the poor. And shockingly, she wears a shiny brooch that says Amor vincit omnia, love conquers all. And let me tell you, in this context, she is definitely not talking about spiritual love. But look, if the monk and prioress are just a little vain, these next guys are the ultimate hypocrites who actively exploit the vulnerable. The jolly friar is supposed to be a beggar helping the poor, right? But he takes bribes and literally sells confessions. Then there's the summoner. His job is to bring sinners to church court, but he's this perpetually drunk, irritable man scarred by leprosy who just spouts fake Latin to sound smart. And his buddy, the partner, with his long, greasy yellow hair, total fraud. He travels around with a bag of pig bones claiming they're holy relics, like the veil of the Virgin Mary, just to scam gullible people out of their hard-earned money. It's wild. Moving right along to Section 4, the rising middle class, wealth, fashion, and independence. Stepping away from the church for a bit, there was a massive shift happening in 14th century society. Characters like the merchant and the man of law really reflect this changing world. The merchant wears a very fashionable, multicolored cloak and has this distinctive forked beard. He appears incredibly successful, though ironically, he is deeply in debt. And the man of law is an extravagantly wealthy lawyer who knows absolutely every statute by heart. These are men gaining real power and influence through specialized skills and trade, directly rivaling the traditional nobility who were simply born into their wealth. Okay, so now you might be wondering, what does this massive number 5 represent? 5 is the number of times the legendary wife of Bath has been married. Yes, Alice Soon is this vibrant, gap-toothed woman who is deaf in one ear. She's technically a seamstress by trade, but really, she is a professional wife by occupation. She is an absolute pioneer of a character who uses marriage, her sexuality, and her immense wealth to maintain total dominance and sovereignty over her husbands. Plus, she is fiercely independent. I mean, she has traveled on pilgrimages to Jerusalem 3 separate times. Section 5. Scoundrels, Thieves, and Rascals, the Unruly Mob. Now for the downright shady characters bringing absolute chaos to the trip. We have these obscure medieval jobs, the reeve, who essentially manages an estate, and the mancipal, who purchases provisions for a law school. Now, neither of these men are formally educated, but they are ruthlessly clever. The reeve is slender, old, and crabby, and literally everyone fears him because he knows all their tricks. Both of these men consistently outsmart the wealthy lawyers and lords they work for, quietly skimming money off the top and making themselves incredibly rich in the process. Then there is the miller. Just picture this, a brawny, pug-nosed tradesman with a red beard and a giant wart right on his nose. He's a champion wrestler who steals corn from his bosses and literally rips doors off their hinges just for fun. He is loud, he's offensive, and he is the one who gets wildly drunk, completely ruining the polite storytelling schedule by insisting on going second. His physical ugliness perfectly mirrors his absolute crass personality. And that brings us to Section 6, Stories Within the Story, Fiction Matching the Teller. The Miller's Tale is our absolute prime example of this. It is a hilarious, completely bawdy, and totally inappropriate story. It follows a gullible old carpenter named John who's overly possessive of his beautiful young wife, Alison. Well, a clever young scholar named Nicholas boards with them, and he tricks John into believing a second biblical flood is coming. So while John is hiding in a tub suspended from the ceiling trying to survive this fake flood, Nicholas is busy sleeping with Alison. Throw in a vain parish clerk named Absalom who's trying to woo Alison and ends up getting terribly humiliated, and you just have absolute chaos. But the main takeaway here is that this crass, rule-breaking, ridiculous story, it perfectly matches the crass, rule-breaking nature of the miller himself. You see, to pass the time, the host proposes a storytelling contest, and this theme actually builds across the whole group. Every single tale is a mirror. The noble series knight, he tells an epic story of courtly love, chivalry, and Greek gods. The dominant wife of Bath, she tells a story set in King Arthur's court where the ultimate moral is that women desire absolute sovereignty over their husbands. And the witty nun's priest tells a fable about a rooster named Chanticleer and a fox to warn against the dangers of flattery. Their fiction is a direct, brilliant reflection of their own worldviews and hidden desires. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this question to think about. When you look at these 600-year-old archetypes, the greedy scammers selling fake cures, the earnest do-getters, the social climbers, and the loudmouths, has human nature really changed at all? Because I guarantee you, if you look closely enough, you will realize you are still sitting next to these exact same characters today. So which of Chaucer's Pilgrims are you? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the characters in your own life.